All right, welcome everyone to our new volunteer training. So I am Cheryl Holt. I am the Executive Director for River Valley Riders. I'm also a PATH certified instructor and one of the founding, or one of the people that founded RVR. So what we want to do is probably start out with talking about a little bit of history of River Valley Riders. Our mission is to enrich the lives of children and adults with special needs by providing equine assisted services. We were established in 1999 as a Minnesota 501c3 organization, so all your contributions to RVR are tax deductible. Lessons are conducted by PATH certified instructors, and PATH is Professional Association of Therapeutic Horsemanship International. And Anne will talk a little bit more about PATH International when she goes through the manual. We started out by using a rented arena at the Washington County Fairgrounds with 18 riders. But our dream has always been to own our own property, which came true in 2009. We purchased 38 acres in Afton. And then we have been building our facility over these years since 2009. And you can see the steps of adding electricity and lights. And we had our first lessons there in September of 2011. So our biggest add to the property was our indoor arena, which we did. We had it finished in 2018, so we were able to use it in 2019. And if anyone remembers 2019, it was like the wettest year. It's the 100-year wet year of Minnesota. So thank goodness we had the arena, or we would have had to cancel about a third of our lessons. So we have an indoor arena. That means we do ride when it rains, although, there are exceptions, and Anne will talk a little bit about that too, for severe weather and stuff. So during 2020 and 2021, we've been fundraising for our phase 2 of the build for the facility, which will be the front of the building. We'll add on the structure for the offices. We'll have and what will be finished inside of that is indoor bathrooms, which is awesome. And those will also be our storm shelters. And we'll have a viewing room and I think one office, a little conference room. And then we'll do an annex to the side of the arena. So it'll be off to the south side over here. And we're going to have all the mounting happen out there. So when you go out to the site this afternoon, you'll see that we have our ramp and everything in the indoor arena. So we want to move that out of there to open up the whole arena. So that's our next plan. And that is happening this year. Yay. And you will be able to see our progress in action, if you choose to volunteer with us. So that's our exciting news for our history and our plans for the future. And now I'll turn it over to Kathy Jo.
Hi, I am Kathy Jo, Development Director and Carriage Driving Instructor. In support of our mission, we are proud to host these fundraisers. On September 10th, our Walk, Wheel, and Ride-a-thon is a chance to gather together at Lake Elmo Park Reserve in support of RVR. We want everyone to participate at the level at which they are comfortable. You can donate yourself or collect pledges from your family and friends. Then saddle up your horse or grab your walking shoes and join us for an 8-mile ride or a 3-mile walk on trails in beautiful Lake Elmo Park Reserve on Saturday, September 10th. We also have our mini ride-a-thon during lesson times in late September. We have a special trail ride for our participants that week, so please consider supporting our riders. Then on November 19th, the Roundup Gala is our end-of-year celebration of the accomplishments of our participants, including stories, videos, and photos. The evening includes dinner, music, fundraising auction, and games. We hope you will come and bring your family and friends so they can learn more about how you support our participants and the difference you make in their lives. Tickets will be available for sale later this summer.
So now I wanted to kind of get into our common diagnoses of our participants. So these are people that the diagnosis I'll be talking about are ones that are exhibited in the riders and carriage drivers that we have this year. So the most common are autism. We have a variety of genetic disorders, Down syndrome being the largest or the most, I would say. And then cerebral palsy, traumatic brain injury, and ADD, ADHD. So I'll talk a little bit about these different disabilities. Autism. So 31% of our participants have autism. And that's usually, that is our highest disability that we service year to year. So it's not just this year, it's the highest, but most years it is. It's a complex development disability that typically appears during the first 3 years of the person's life. It affects the normal functioning of the brain, impacting development in many areas, but most notably social interaction and communication. And, you know, there is just a huge spectrum on autism. So from very high functioning to very low functioning. So, and you'll have a flavor of all of those in our program. So people can either be verbal or nonverbal, but I do want to stress that even, and this is not even just autism, but in any of the diagnoses, if a person is nonverbal, it does not mean that they can't understand what you're saying. So just that they can't respond to you in language. So you have to be very cognizant of the fact that that person hears and understands what you're saying. And then many times people with autism want to avoid eye contact and they lack kind of the facial expressions. They may have lack of empathy. You know, if somebody gets hurt, they may laugh at it. They don't realize, you know, that they should feel sorry for someone. Repetition of words and phrases. So we have writers, I have one writer that says buy home, being buy, like B-Y-E, goodbye home. Buy home for most of the writing set, 45 minutes of writing. Or they may get obsessed about something, like dinosaurs is a big one. So we've had a lot of the writers being very obsessed with dinosaurs or bears, and they wonder if they're in the field and things like that. So it's kind of fun in a way. And then sometimes they all focus on a part of something instead of the whole. So you just have to let them process things as they can. They're not going to process the same as you and I. And they have a hard time accepting change. Routine is very important to people that have autism. So we want to try to keep the same riders or same volunteers with the riders and keep them on the same horse. And sometimes it's the fact that horses will be gone because we use volunteer horses and people go on vacation. So we have to fill in a different horse. And sometimes when that happens, if I know the person has a hard time with change, I will contact the parents and let them know, you know, Romeo is not going to be here tonight. So, you know, this person is going to ride Hero or something, and then maybe send a picture so that they can kind of grease the skids, so to speak. So when that rider comes to RVR, they know they're not going to ride the horse they normally ride. So sometimes we have to go through that much effort just to make things, you know, work for them. And then they'll have repetitive behaviors as well, like rocking and hand. Genetic disorders is 21% of our participants. Down syndrome is a chromosomal disorder where there is an extra 21st chromosome. It happens 1 out of 800 to 1,000 births, so it's quite common. Generally, there could be features that you see different, shorter stature, distinctive facial features, decreased or poor muscle tone, intellectual disabilities, delayed development, and they can be verbal or nonverbal, and they may have seizures as well. I'm checking texts here really quick, just to make sure it's not one of you texting me. Okay. All right. And then CP is 12% of our participants, cerebral palsy. It's a non-progressive, but not unchanging disorder of movement or posture due to an insult of the developing brain. So symptoms can be muscle tightness and spasms, involuntary movement. Sometimes they'll jerk if, and they're not meaning to do it, they'll just do it. And it doesn't mean they've was afraid of something. It's just happens. So they have difficulty with gross motor skills, such as walking or running, difficulty with fine motor skills, such as writing. They may also have seizures, learning disabilities, and developmental delay. So ADD, ADHD is 6%. This is attention deficit disorder or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And it's a hereditary biochemical disorder that affects a person's ability to perform to his or her potential. So many of these individuals will appear not to have a disability until something happens. And then you see that they do not react to the world in the way we may do. So they have impulsive behavior, which there's a lot of us that have that. We don't have ADD, but difficulty focusing on tasks, inattention. They often disregard social courtesies, so they can be rude sometimes. Often difficulty in making and maintaining friendships, and they have poor organizational skills. And these folks, you will, they may be one of the ADHD individuals, could be someone that might want to run out to meet their horse. So it can be in some cases that the sidewalkers who are responsible for the rider will need to hang on to that person, but or put your arm in front of them to make them stop if they don't want you to touch them. Many times our riders don't want you to touch them. So you might have to do that, but the instructor will tell you if that person has that tendency to do that. Traumatic brain injury, TBI, 3% of our participants. So that is a trauma to the head, and generally it can be caused by car accidents, or it can be caused by falling off a horse if you're not wearing your helmet. Symptoms are balance issues, memory loss, impaired speech, decision-making difficulties, and it can change a person's personality. It can have emotional and behavioral changes. Seizures and epilepsy. So this is just general, because seizures, as you saw when we were going through the different disabilities, can happen in any of the cases, autism, Down syndrome, etc. So seizures are symptoms of abnormal brain function resulting in a surge of energy through the brain, causing unconsciousness and contractions of the muscles. Now, they may last 1 minute or 2 or more than that. Epilepsy is the 4th most common neurological disorder and affects people of all ages. So it means the same thing as seizure disorder. And most of our riders, just so you know, have their seizures under control. But that doesn't mean that it can't happen. So it has happened over the years, and we have to dismount the rider. And Kathy Jo included in our email today yesterday that you have the seizure protocol attached to that. So please read through that. Muscle tone. So we just want to talk about, like when we talk about low muscle tone, that's hypotonia. It's floppy body, muscle weakness, joint instability, poor body control. And a good friend of mine and one of our instructors, who's also a physical therapist, has a great way to compare this. So the low muscle tone is like the scarecrow on Wizard of Oz. So, he's floppy, he can be all over the place. He's really loose. And then the high muscle tone, hypertonia, that's like the Tin Man on Wizard of Oz. So rigid body and limbs, muscle tightness, joint stiffness, things like that. So you'll see that in our riders. So as so if they can't do everything that we're asking them, the big thing is that they try to do what they can do. And that's what's important. Well, now I'm going to turn it over to Anne, and she's going to go over the training manual.
Thank you, Cheryl. Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm really glad you all are here. My name is Ann Tufte. I am a PATH International Certified Instructor, as well as the Volunteer Coordinator for River Valley Riders. So I'm going to go over the manual, and everything we have in the manual is kind of our rules and regulations for how we do things. And these are what we have found to work best for our participants. River Valley Riders is a member of the Professional Association of Therapeutic Horsemanship International, or PATH International. They are our governing body for how we certify our instructors, how we train our instructors, how we write our manuals, and how we set up our program. Their website, I believe, is right there, pathinternational.org. I recommend everybody go check it out and read more about them. So moving on. Here's our address. This is where we are. We will be in Afton this afternoon. I believe our mailing address is in Woodbury. That phone number right there, that is your Grand Central station. Always call that. That's our hotline. That will tell you if lessons are canceled and what's going on. We have all of our socials there. And then we have our Afton site, which is where we will be this afternoon. And we also have a site in New Richmond, Wisconsin, which we will also need volunteers for, and that's where I'll be teaching. And then moving on. So our program, again, as Cheryl mentioned, is comprised of riders and drivers. We do therapeutic horseback riding as well as therapeutic driving. Those are some of the benefits that people seem to get from our program. They get physical benefits, social skills, and communication abilities. It seems to improve all of those. We have several horses in our program that are specially selected and trained to do this kind of work. And then volunteers, you guys, our program runs on volunteers, so it does not function without volunteers. So you guys are very, very important to our program. So let's see, some benefits of volunteering. You get the satisfaction of knowing you have assisted a person with special needs to participate in a therapeutic horseback riding and carriage driving program. Volunteering is a great opportunity to meet other people who enjoy being around horses and kids. And it's also a really good opportunity to meet and work with horses. It's a good way to gain hands-on experience in a therapeutic recreational setting, working with people who have disabilities. It's really good for your health. You will get a lot of steps in sidewalking. It's a really good way to explore career opportunities. I will say my own personal experience, I started out as a volunteer and it led to a career in teaching. Not necessarily what volunteering always leads to, but it is a good way to get some experience working with people with disabilities. Your mileage is tax deductible. So anytime you drive to the center, you can keep track of your mileage and it will be tax deductible, as well as any donation you make to us, however big or small. It also fulfills school and church requests for service. So also keep track of that and let us know if we can help with anything like that. All right, moving on. All right. So there are a lot of ways that you can help RVR carry out its mission. The primary jobs we almost always need are a horse leader and a sidewalker in our lessons. But it's not limited to that. We need help in just about every area. You do not need equine experience to volunteer for these activities. You just need a willingness to learn. Like any nonprofit organization, River Valley Riders has many administrative, communications, fundraising, promotional, and community outreach tasks that need to be done. If you have special background or skills in any of these areas, we'd love to have your help. Let us know what you can do. The riders, drivers, and horses all count on RVR's volunteers to make the program successful. I cannot stress that enough. So we must be able to count on you for what we call the 3 C's, as you can see there: commitment, confidentiality, and conduct. For commitment, we need you to commit to showing up every week if you sign up to work in a lesson. Not only is it good for us so we can actually carry out the lessons, it's really important for most of the riders. A lot of them have anxiety when they don't know what they're dealing with. And if they have different volunteers every week, it doesn't help with that consistency that they need to be successful. It also helps so then us instructors are not training volunteers every week. If a rider is not coming, we will fill from the wait list. So we ask that even if you have a regular rider and they say they're not going to be here next week or what have you, we usually fill it from we have a very long wait list. We usually fill it from the wait list. So we will ask you to still come unless your instructor explicitly tells you not to come. Know that phone number to call if you need to miss your volunteer assignment, and call as early as possible, or if we cancel lessons for any reason. Again, that hotline is Grand Central Station. So confidentiality, we try to maintain rider driver information as confidential as much as possible. I'm sure you heard earlier, Cheryl talked about one of her students and some of the things they do. She did not mention any names. We don't want you to never talk about any of our participants, but we do try to ask that you not use names. You don't want to use anything that can be identified. We are a big community and everybody kind of knows everybody. So we want to make sure that we're not giving out confidential information that you may come across. Conduct is our 3rd C. We do ask that you show as much professionalism as possible. You expect that any of your behavior would reflect RVR. So we do ask for professional conduct. We ask that all people and horses are treated with dignity and respect. We ask that you read and refer to this handbook. So even if you haven't read it yet, please read through it. And even after training, you can read through it again. Many of our riders and drivers are legally vulnerable. To help assure safety, we require volunteers 18 years and older to complete a background check, and we'll talk more about that later. The vulnerability issue can work both ways. You as a volunteer can also be vulnerable. Verbal, physical, or emotional abuse will not be tolerated and should be reported to an instructor or therapist immediately. Understand and follow the requests of the instructor without interference. So in return, if you give us these 3 C's, you can always count on RVR for your right to a clear job description with an appropriate volunteer placement, information and training you need to do your job successfully, supervision and open communication from the instructors, have confidence to ask questions, always ask questions, get answers and receive feedback, and be recognized for your achievements. All right, and moving on.
Any questions at all yet?
What?
Any questions?
Yep. Any questions, if you want to just put them into the chat or raise your hand, and I'm sure Kathy, Joe, or Cheryl will interrupt me and we can answer questions at the end of each section. And I'm guessing we don't have any. Bueller. Okay. So I'm going to go on. All right, I'm going to go ahead and move on. Some of our volunteer policies, we do have a policy of drug-free awareness. Hang on one second. We're gonna answer this question. I am going to address this later on, but yes, we do require a weekly volunteer commitment, and I will address that more in detail in a little bit. Thank you for your question. All right, so we do have a policy of drug-free awareness. We are a drug-free program, period. Volunteering while under the influence of illegal drugs or alcohol is prohibited and will lead to your dismissal. Any suspicions of illegal drug use or use of alcohol by a volunteer should be reported to an instructor. All RVR sites are smoke-free and vaping is not allowed. So again, volunteer background checks. We are committed to creating a safe environment for children and adults with special needs. Criminal background checks are one strategy we use to ensure safety for our participants. River Valley Riders policy is to conduct criminal background checks on all adult volunteers and to repeat criminal background checks every 3 years. So we do pay for these background checks. There is no cost to the volunteer. However, we usually wait until you volunteered for a few weeks to make sure that you're committed to us before we run these background checks. So for you guys, if you did commit to volunteering with us, we would probably run your background checks in May. We would run them in May. Our social media policy, if you decide to post anything about RVR, we do ask that you keep it respectful and relevant. We ask that you avoid spam or topics that are unrelated to River Valley Riders. We do love when you share your stories, but remember that River Valley Riders strives to maintain privacy and confidentiality for our riders and drivers. Please do not tag people in photos and do not post solicitations. And River Valley Riders also reserves the right to remove in postings that we deem inappropriate. Do we have any questions before moving on? All right, I don't think so. My screen only shows my face right now, so I feel like I'm just talking to no one. So these are some of our volunteer job descriptions. The most common one when you first come in as a new volunteer, regardless of your experience, is usually a sidewalker. And to be honest, it's the best one. The purpose is to work with people who have disabilities in a safe horseback riding program. Your direct supervisor will be the instructor during the lesson. Some of your responsibilities, we ask that you wear closed toe and closed back shoes whenever you are at the barn. No Crocs, no flip-flops, no slip-on shoes. Boots are best, but we do just ask that you have closed toe and closed back shoes. We also ask that if you have long hair, like me, you tie it back, and you want to limit the wearing of jewelry. Some of our riders will reach and grab you, and that can be painful if you have earrings in. And also like things like necklaces can get caught up and stuff. So we ask that you be mindful of how you dress when you come. We also ask that you do not wear any low-cut tank tops or shirts. Ladies, it's when you have a rider on a horse, their vantage point looking down is much different than people on the ground. So again, we just ask that you be mindful of what you wear when you come here. We also ask that you arrive 15 minutes before the start of your assigned session. We ask that you get to us early so that you can check the schedule board for changes and to wait for your assigned rider. That will also give you a chance to check the rider profile sheet for information about your rider and their goals. As we mentioned earlier, there's a lot of different disabilities with our riders, and you usually won't find out until you meet them which individual disability they may have. Our rider profile sheets are in a 3-ring binder. We usually keep them in the picnic shelter for most of our lessons at the Afton site. And with that, there will also be some files on the horses. So you can also look at the horse profile sheet for information about the horse you will be sidewalking with. This can just be for fun, but it's also good to know if your horse is a tiny little pony or a huge draft horse. And again, it just helps if you get there 15 minutes early so that we know you're there, so that we know the lesson can proceed, and also just to help make sure that all of our housekeeping is done. We also ask that as a sidewalker, you find your rider and you assist them with putting on their helmet, and you wait with them until they mount. Some of our riders, like if they have ADHD and they're a little hyperactive and impulsive, they might see something out in the field and take off running for it. So that's why we ask you guys, once they're there, you kind of come and take custody of them and just make sure to keep them safe. And always notify the lead instructor for absences as early as possible, and or call the appropriate RVR phone number, that hotline. Some of the sidewalker tips, we ask that you use the hold directed by the instructor. This afternoon, when we're in person, we'll show you the different types of holds that we mostly use. But we do ask that you use the hold as given by your instructor. We also ask that one sidewalker at a time gives instruction to the rider. The sidewalker toward the inside of the arena reinforces instructions from the instructor if required. We ask that you try not to everybody talking at once. it's very confusing for a rider to have multiple people giving them that audio input at a time. So we ask that you try to limit your instructions to the rider. We also ask that you allow the rider to process directions. A lot of our riders are cognitively delayed, and it just takes them a little longer than it would like someone like you or me to listen to directions and to fully process them. And sometimes I feel like a lot of people with disabilities will tend to just not listen if they feel like everybody is throwing instructions at them all the time. So if you give them that space to actually process the directions, they're more likely to trust us and to actually listen to directions. We also ask that you challenge riders to move toward independence. Another big problem with people with disabilities is learned helplessness. Everyone, doesn't want to wait for that little delay, in processing directions. They want to let's just do it. I'll just put your leg there, put your hand there and get it done. So a lot of people with disabilities have the tendency to learn this learned helplessness. They just won't do anything. They won't put out any effort to try to be independent. So it is your job to try to encourage that and empower them to be as independent as possible. And it takes a lot of patience. If a horse steps on your foot, please just quietly push the horse off your foot. Do not become alarmed or hit the horse. Please inform the instructor. If you are hurt, if there is an incident where you are hurt, please tell the instructor and they will help you fill out an incident report. Some qualifications. We do ask that you are comfortable working around horses. However, if you've never been around a horse and you're a little nervous or fearful, I always say fear is a sign of intelligence. So that's good. That means you're smart. If you're not afraid, might be something else. Anyway, we will try to work with you as best we can to make you comfortable around the horses. Most of our horses are very well trained and they're pretty easygoing. They're the best horses in the world. We ask you to attend these trainings. You read and follow the volunteer training manual. We do ask that you be able to walk intermittently for up to 30 to 45 minutes at a time. There may even be some jogging and you may be on some uneven ground. So that's something to keep in mind. We also ask that you be able to lift your arm shoulder height for up to 30 minutes. So another good reason to pay attention to those steps and, maybe do some yoga and some weightlifting. Time commitments. To answer that question from a little earlier, we do ask that you commit once a week for a 1 to 3 hour time frame. And these commitments, we usually go in sessions. So we'll have a spring session, a summer session, a fall session. We ask that volunteers commit for 1 week for an entire session. So again, we ask for that commitment because it helps to keep consistency during the lesson, helps keep consistency for the instructor, and it most importantly helps keep that consistency for the participant, for the rider. They know there's going to be a familiar face on either side of them when they're riding the big scary horse. And with that being said, you can also sign up to be a substitute because life happens, things happen, people can't always make it. And we love to have substitutes that are well trained and willing and to come in with smiles on their faces and jump in wherever needed. So I hope that answered that one question. And I would like to say, do we have any questions about anything on there? I'm gonna open up the chat. Feel free to raise your hand or type in the chat. And we'll try to go over, if anybody else has any other questions, we will try to go over any questions in chat towards the end. All right, moving on. The next most common volunteer job is a horse leader. The purpose is to assist people with disabilities in a safe horseback riding program by leading the therapy horse. Your direct supervisor will be the instructor. Some of our responsibilities are pretty similar to the sidewalker. Closed-toe shoes, boots are recommended. Long hair should be tied back. Limit the amount of jewelry you're wearing. And we ask that you get there early to check the rider profile sheet and the horse profile sheet, as well as to check the assignment board for any changes. We asked you to report any problems or concerns with horses or equipment to the instructor as soon as possible. And you want to notify the lead instructor for absences as early as possible and or call that hotline, RVR hotline. So we do remember that the horse is depending on you to be the leader. They want to follow your directions. I've always said that, like, in a therapeutic riding lesson, the sidewalkers are primarily responsible for the rider. The horse leader is primarily responsible for the horse. We ask that you not turn around and talk to the rider, or try to limit that as much as possible. When you're a horse leader, your focus is the horse. Some other tips when leading a therapy horse. We always ask that you stay with the horse and you try to maintain control of them. When you come to a full stop, we ask that you stand in front of the horse, facing the horse when the horse is at a halt. And we also ask that you be alert to where sidewalkers are at all times. Watch out for puddles, fences, other horses, etc. Those of you that are going to be training to be horse leaders, when you come in person this afternoon, you will find that even if you've led horses millions of times, you know how to lead a horse. When you have two sidewalkers on either side of you, that's very, very different from just leading a horse around. You're much wider than you think you are. So you have to kind of keep the horse a little bit further away from the fence and what have you. And, you know, turns are much wider. And with that, you also want to make sure that horses have adequate space between them. No tailgating, what have you. Some of our qualifications, same thing as sidewalker: attend these trainings, read and follow the volunteer manual, be able to walk, you know, up to 45 minutes at a time with some jogging and or on the uneven ground. We do ask for horse leaders that you have a background in working with horses, or you be experienced working with horses and have basic horse knowledge. And the time commitment is pretty similar. We ask that you commit to once a week for up to a 3-hour time frame for each session. And you can also sign up to be a substitute. I think I see a question in the chat. I have a vacation scheduled in May. Usually, like I said, if we know ahead of time, it's just like the absences. If you commit to something and then you have a vacation scheduled, if you just let us know ahead of time, we should be able to work that out. Do you mean we have to lift our arms and not rest them on anything? So again, this is kind of hard to do over Zoom. It'll be easier to show you when we get in person this afternoon. Some of our holds, you do have to hold your hand up like this for quite a while. And yes, it will be for the entirety of the lesson. Usually when we have a participant where you have to where the sidewalkers have to hold their hand up for that long, we will try to stop and take breaks and have the sidewalkers switch. So both of your arms get an even workout. And again, if that is an issue for you, let us know and we'll try not to schedule you to sidewalk with anyone that has to have a solid hold that long. We'll do the best we can.
And your arm is resting on that person on the horse. You're not just holding it in the air.
Yes, it will. It like rests on their thigh and on the side of the horse. Yes, my bad. Again, it's hard to describe that over Zoom. It's easier. You'll see that more in person this afternoon. Right. What I mean by that. Thank you, Cheryl. Mm-hmm. All right. So if there are no other questions.
There was one more came up. Oh, maybe that was it. Okay.
Speak now or forever hold your peace. I'm kidding. You can ask questions all through this. I'm kidding. All right, let's move on to the next one. The next page. These are some of our basic safety rules. Safety is our top priority for obvious reasons. We try to provide a safe environment for all those involved. Working with horses is a risk activity, and policies have been developed to minimize this risk. And as I mentioned before, a lot of these policies are what we have found to work best. We take it very seriously. In case you didn't hear me say it twice, please wear supportive boots or enclosed shoes when working around a horse. For the safety of the riders, only people with a background in horses or who have horse experience have been evaluated and approved by an instructor may lead a horse during class. If you must carry a cell phone, we ask that you put it on silent or vibrate only. No talking and no texting during lessons while you're doing your volunteer duties. If you must take a call, we ask that you notify an instructor to cover for you. You can read through some of these. Best to pet the horse on the neck or the shoulder. When leading a horse, always walk alongside his head, not in front of him. A lot of these things we'll go over in more detail this afternoon when you're in person. One of our big things is please do not bring treats for the horses. We love it when people love our horses, and believe me, the horses love it when you bring treats for them. However, it can be disruptive during some of our lessons. Because then the horses are only focused on the food, and then they're looking in people's pockets. And then also a big problem we have is then they become nippy, and they could nip either a volunteer or worse, one of our participants. So we ask that you just try to show the horses your love by just petting them on the neck or the shoulder. All riders and drivers must wear helmets when mounted or near a horse. This is why sidewalkers, we ask that you kind of take control of your riders and make sure they have helmets, and make sure you know where they are, because we need them to be safe. Gates to the arena must remain closed during lessons. We ask that there are no pets allowed. We ask that you do not bring any pets. There are no pets allowed on the property, except for service animals. So don't bring your dogs, don't bring any extra pets, please. I believe we talked about the seizure protocol sheet earlier. There should be a link. There should be a link to that in that email that was sent out on Friday. I believe it's also on our website. So if you absolutely can't find it, go to our website and you should be able to find the link to the seizure protocol sheet. And Cheryl talked a bit about that earlier. Most seizures, the rider usually kind of not really takes care of themselves, but they kind of have it. You don't usually have to do anything, but it is a good thing to just kind of read through to be prepared for that. And then to protect the safety of riders, drivers, families, volunteers, and horses, lessons will be canceled for severe weather, severe temperatures. So let's see. Normally, if you do not hear from your lead instructor about any severe weather, if you call that hotline, it's usually updated daily to let you know, so that if lessons are canceled, and I believe it's after 3:30 p.m. for evening lessons, you want to check that after 3:30 p.m. to see if lessons are canceled if you do not hear from your lead instructor. And then let's see, I think we had another question before we move on to the next one. So it says, are parents and guardians required to be on site? Usually they are. They're almost always there. They usually hang out in the picnic shelter and they love to watch the lessons. Parents of riders, just wondering the parents.
We have to have at least one person responsible for the rider to be a parent or a guardian.
Yeah, it's a good question. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. If we have no other questions, I'm ready to move on to the next one. Emergency action plans. Almost there. There we go. So again, these are some of these are best done in person, so you can kind of see where things are and see what our drills will be like. Severe weather, tornado, if those pop up during lessons, instructors and or designated individuals will monitor the weather and conditions. We do have places in Afton where we go for, I believe right now it's in the ditch. Once our building is built, we'll have a storm shelter inside of the building. And I'm assuming everybody here grew up in the Midwest. You want to, anytime there's a tornado, you want to help everyone as much as possible and try to get yourself out of harm's way. And in New Richmond in Wisconsin, if any of you choose to volunteer there, I will show you where our severe weather shelter is there. In case of client or volunteer injury, we ask that you do not move the person unless it is necessary to save their life. You want to clear other riders and drivers, volunteers, and all horses from the area. The instructor will designate someone to call 911 if they do not call 911 themselves, and tell them who, what, when, where, what the situation is. If anyone is injured, we want to find the emergency contact name and number from probably from their rider profile sheet, and call the person listed as their emergency contact if they are not on site. Fill out an accident injury form with the assistance of the instructor. It is important that even if it's a minor incident or injury, we do try to fill out a form to make, just to kind of track to make sure what happened. Let's see. I also had a note here. I wanted to talk about name tags. This afternoon, we will have paper name tags for everyone that'll just go stick on your shirt. Once you do decide to volunteer with us, we will get you a more permanent name tag. It's like a clip-on thing that goes in your shirt. And once you get that, you are responsible for keeping your name tag in your possession. If you lose it and we have to get another one, you can donate $5 to our little donation box, and we will get you another one. It's a good little fundraiser for us. So I'll have some closing thoughts, and then we can open the floor up for questions again. Smiles say 1,000 words, only louder. Acknowledge efforts of the rider or driver and encourage independence, please, always. Promptness and reliability are key to a program's success. Patience and praise equals success and results. We try to respect everyone's right to confidentiality. Please do not suffer through a personality clash. Please ask to be reassigned for any reason. We'll do the best we can. Again, check the schedule board for changes. That's why we ask that you arrive early, so that you can check the schedule board. We also ask that you mark your volunteer hours. We will have I believe, a binder in the picnic shelter to mark your volunteer hours. That's good for us. We like to keep track of our volunteer hours, because when we apply for grants, we can show how much of our program is supported by volunteers. It shows how much volunteers really help. Really help to keep the program running. And just remember, your dedication and sincerity make a world of difference. Thank you for your time today and coming to this training. And I am really excited to meet all of you in person this afternoon.
Okay, Kathy Jo, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, hello again. I'm also one of RVR's carriage driving instructors. Linda is our other carriage driving instructor. Our goal is for our participants to learn to drive a horse as independently as possible. Some of the benefits of carriage driving are to improve posture and balance, develop self-esteem and confidence, stimulate communication, improve hand-eye coordination, and foster self-reliance by providing a sense of freedom. Our four-wheel carriage, shown here, is designed so that our drivers may remain in their wheelchairs if necessary. We also use two-wheel carts for drivers who can mount and support themselves with minimal assistance. As a volunteer in the driving program, you will work closely with our participants, our horses, as well as a variety of other responsibilities. Lessons are on Mondays and Thursday afternoons. In addition to Tanner in these photos, we also have Arvid and Annie, our driving horses. They're all part of our riding program too. So contact me to learn more about volunteer positions available and the additional training required. And then we have other volunteer opportunities. If you have a special talent with photography, gardening, party planning, or fundraising, we have jobs for you. If your schedule is flexible during the day, we hope you will join us for opportunities during the summer. So please tell us about your interests in these areas. Back to you, Cheryl.
Hey, thank you everyone for your time today and for watching our presentation.